Hey, my name is Ethan. I'm 31 years old. 3 weeks ago, I was just an HVAC guy trying to build my business, fixing air conditioners for people who could afford houses I'd never live in. Then, on the hottest day of the summer, I pressed an ice cube to a married woman's wrist to calibrate her thermostat, and she closed her eyes just a second too long. The ice melted between my fingers. Her skin was warm as silk, and when I stepped back, she looked right at me and whispered, "Now I'm the one feeling too warm." If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments, because I still don't know if what we did was wrong. I never thought an ice cube could change everything, but that's getting ahead of myself. Monday morning, July 15th, heat advisory, day 3. My phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. while I was loading the van. New client, Whitman residence, Meridian Hills. AC unit making concerning sounds. The address made me pause. Meridian Hills wasn't my usual territory. Those houses had central air that cost more than my van. But work was work, and my business was 2 months old. I needed every call. The drive took 40 minutes through neighborhoods that got progressively cleaner. Lawns got greener, cars got quieter. My 2018 Transit looked shabby by the time I reached the gate. Patrick, the guard, checked his clipboard twice. Middle-aged guy with kind eyes and a suspicious job description. "First time?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Cole HVAC." He wrote down my plate number with the slow care of someone who'd seen things. Mrs. Whitman called ahead. "Follow the circle to 1408. The Whitman house sat behind a hedge that probably cost more than my rent. Glass and stone, clean lines, the kind of place where you wipe your feet twice and still feel dirty. I parked in the circle drive, checking my reflection in the side mirror. Work shirt clean, boots as clean as they'd ever be. I grabbed my toolbox and walked to the front door. The woman who answered made me forget my prepared introduction. Claire Whitman was maybe 44, dressed in ivory linen that somehow stayed perfect in 96 degrees. Brown hair pulled back, green eyes that looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the heat. "Mr. Cole?" "Yes, ma'am, about the AC unit." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach those eyes. "Thank you for coming. I know you must be busy today." I followed her inside. The foyer was museum cool and quiet, marble floors, a chandelier that threw tiny rainbows. Everything smelled like citrus cleaning spray and something floral I couldn't name. "The unit's been making a sound since yesterday," she said, leading me toward the back of the house. "Like a humming? But not quite right." Her voice was educated, careful, the kind of voice that had learned to say things without really saying them. The kitchen was twice the size of my apartment. White marble counters, stainless steel everything. A bowl of fresh lemons sat next to the sink like they were placed there for a magazine shoot. "Can I get you some water?" she asked. "It's brutal out there." "Water would be great, thank you." She pulled a tall glass from a cabinet and filled it with ice. The sound was sharp and clean in the quiet house. When she handed it to me, our fingers barely brushed. "The unit's through here," she said. The mechanical room was tucked behind the kitchen. Clean, organized. Not like the cluttered basements I usually worked in. The unit was a high-end Carrier, maybe 3 years old. I listened for 30 seconds. "There's your problem," I said. "Fan blades slightly off balance. Probably came loose during installation. Should be a quick fix." "Oh?" She sounded almost disappointed. "I was afraid it might be more complicated." I started pulling tools from my kit. Sometimes the simple problems sound the worst. "Mind if I ask, you been getting maintenance on this thing?" "Andrew, my husband, handles the service contracts. I think someone comes twice a year, but they just change filters and leave." 20 minutes later, I had the fan balanced and the unit purring like it should. Claire stood in the doorway, watching me work. Not hovering, just present. You're very thorough, she said. My mom used to clean houses, I said, tightening the last screw. She always said, leave things better than you found them. Stuck with me. Something shifted in her face. That's a good rule. I packed my tools and followed her back to the kitchen. She was already writing a check. What do I owe you? 85 for the service call. She wrote 150. The extras for coming so quickly, and for the weekend you probably didn't get because of this heat wave. I looked at the check, back at her. Ma'am, that's too much. It's not. Her voice was firm but kind. Trust me. As I walked toward the door, I noticed a small hinge on the kitchen cabinet hanging loose. Without thinking, I stopped. This'll fall off soon if you don't fix it, I said, pointing. Oh, I hadn't noticed. I pulled a screwdriver from my pocket and tightened it in 10 seconds. She watched with an expression I couldn't read. Thank you, she said quietly. At the front door, she shook my hand. Her palm was cool from the ice water, soft in a way that said she'd never changed a tire or painted a fence. If you have any more problems, call directly, I said, handing her my card. Sometimes the big companies, they don't listen like they should. Her laugh was unexpected, light and real. I'll remember that. Walking back to my van, I felt her watching from the window. When I looked back, she raised her hand in a small wave. Her laugh cooled the room faster than the unit did. Tuesday passed in a blur of service calls, broken compressors, clogged drains, a woman in Fountain Square who cried when the cold air finally hit her face. But I kept thinking about Claire Whitman, the way she'd really listened when I explained the fan blade, how she'd made me feel competent instead of just useful. Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Cole, it's Claire Whitman. I'm so sorry to bother you, but the unit's making that sound again. I was in the van, 2 neighborhoods away from another call. Same sound as Monday? Similar, but different? I know that doesn't help. Her voice had something in it. Not panic, but something. I can swing by around 10, I said. No charge for the follow-up. Oh, you don't have to. My work? My warranty? Silence. Then, thank you. Patrick recognized my van at the gate. Back again? Follow-up. He logged my plate and time with the same careful attention. I wondered if he noted everything or just some things. Claire answered the door in jeans and a white blouse. Hair down this time. She looked younger, more real. I feel silly calling you back so soon, she said. Don't. Half my callbacks are things I missed the first time. Other half are things that break 2 days later just to spite me. She smiled at that. Well, this one's definitely doing it to spite you. In the mechanical room, I listened again. Same balanced hum. Nothing wrong. Run it through a full cycle, I said. I want to hear it under load. We stood there in the small space, listening. Her shoulder was maybe 6 inches from mine. I could smell that citrus scent again, mixed with something that was just her. The unit cycled on, off, on again. Perfect. I don't hear anything wrong, I said. It was doing it this morning. Around 8, like a tick, but not quite. I checked every connection, every moving part. Everything was tight. Could be thermal expansion, I said. When the metal heats up, it shifts a tiny bit, makes noise until it settles. Is that bad? Completely normal. Like old houses creaking. Means everything's working. She nodded, but I could see she wasn't convinced. Tell you what, I said. Let me check your thermostat calibration. Sometimes they read wrong and make the unit work harder than it needs to. We walked to the kitchen. The thermostat was mounted near the back door. I pulled out my digital probe. What's it reading? I asked. 74. I held up my probe. 76. Your unit's working 2 degrees harder than it needs to. Is that why Andrew's always adjusting it? The question came out before she could stop it. I pretended not to notice the slip. Could be. Some people run hot, some run cold, but if the thermostat's off, nobody's happy. I started adjusting the calibration. She moved closer to watch. How do you know it's right? She asked. Body temperature, most reliable reference point you've got. I wasn't thinking when I said it, just explaining like I would to any client. But something in her face made me look twice. The hinge I fixed wasn't the one creaking. Here, I said, pulling an ice cube from the bowl she'd left on the A counter. Give me your wrist. She held out her hand without question. I pressed the ice to the inside of her wrist for 3 seconds. Clinical, professional, checking skin temperature. Except her eyes closed for just a moment, and when I moved the ice away, neither of us stepped back. 98.2, I said, reading my probe. Thermostat's now calibrated to actual body temp. That's very precise. Her voice was different, quieter. I stepped back first, put the ice cube in the sink, wiped my hands on my work towel. Should run more efficiently now, I said. She nodded, still looking at her wrist where the ice had been. Can I make you some iced tea? She asked. It's fresh? I knew I should say no. I had 2 more calls before lunch, but something in the way she asked, that'd be nice. She moved around the kitchen like she was grateful for the task. Tall glasses, fresh ice, tea from a pitcher that looked like it belonged in a restaurant. You do this often? I asked. The tea? Every morning. Andrew doesn't drink it, but... She shrugged. Habit. We stood at the island, drinking tea in the quiet house. She asked about my business, how long I'd been doing HVAC, if I liked working for myself. My mom always said I was good with my hands, I said, better at fixing things than explaining why they broke. What does she do? Your mom? Retired, cleaned houses for 40 years, saved enough to get a little place near the senior center. The East Side Center? Yeah, how'd you... I helped with a grant a few years ago. Arts and activities funding. The tea glass slipped in my hand. Just a little, but she noticed. Small world, I said. Very small. We looked at each other across that marble island. Rich woman, working class guy. A gulf neither of us knew how to cross. But the ice cube had melted, and the feeling hadn't. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a smartwatch notification. She glanced at it, and her face changed. Everything okay? I asked. Just... The neighbor, Lila, she's very... Claire paused, looking for the word. Attentive. I nodded like I understood, but I caught a glimpse of the message. Garage cam pinged twice. Need help? Probably just birds, Claire said quickly. The motion sensor's very sensitive. I finished my tea and rinsed the glass in the sink. I should get going. Let you get back to your day. Of course, and thank you for the calibration. I feel better knowing it's accurate. She walked me to the front door. Professional distance. Polite smile. I was reaching for the door handle when we heard it. A car door. Close. Claire went very still. Side door, she said quietly. I didn't ask questions. I followed her through the kitchen to a door that led to the side yard. My heart was beating harder than it should have been. Thank you, she whispered as I stepped outside. Just doing my job, I said, but we both knew that wasn't quite true anymore. I walked around the side of the house like I'd been checking the outdoor unit. By the time I reached my van, a silver BMW was pulling into the circle drive. The man who got out was tall, pressed shirt despite the heat. He had the confident walk of someone who'd never doubted his right to any space he entered. You the AC guy? He asked, walking over. Yes, sir. Just finished up. He looked at my van, the magnetic signs, my work clothes. Andrew Whitman. He extended a manicured hand. Ethan Cole. His grip was firm and brief. Everything working okay? Claire mentioned some noises. Fan blade was slightly off balance. Should be quiet now. Good. These units aren't cheap. Claire appeared from the front door, smoothing her blouse. Andrew, you're home early. Conference call got cancelled. He kissed her cheek without really looking at her. Just meeting the repairman. Mr. Cole, she said, nodding to me. Thank you for the follow-up. Anytime, ma'am. Andrew pulled out his phone, already moving on. I've got to make some calls. Nice meeting you, Eric. Ethan, I said, but he was already walking toward the house. Claire gave me a look that might have been an apology or a warning. I got in my van and drove to the gate. Patrick logged my exit time with the same careful attention he'd given my arrival. But as I pulled onto the main road, I saw Lila Moreno standing on her front walk. Older woman, kind face. She waved at me like she'd seen more than I had. Andrew shook my hand and mispronounced my name. That evening, I sat on my apartment steps with a beer and my phone. The heat was finally breaking, maybe 78 degrees instead of 96. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Claire's number, started typing a message about quarterly maintenance schedules, deleted it, started again. Sensor calibrated, recommend quarterly filter change. Let me know if you hear the hum again. I stared at the message for 10 minutes. Professional, appropriate, nothing anyone could read into. But I didn't hit send. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. But I knew who it was. Let's be careful. Just 3 words, but they said everything. I typed back. Understood. Have a good evening. Then I deleted both messages and went inside. The ice melted first. The feeling didn't. Thursday morning, I avoided Meridian Hills completely. Took calls in Fountain Square, Broad Ripple, places where the houses had aluminum siding and chain link fences. Marco, my apprentice, rode along on the bigger jobs, 22 years old, eager in the way that made him dangerous around expensive equipment. Why we driving so far for a 20-minute repair? He asked as we headed to the south side. Building client base, I said. It wasn't entirely a lie. We spent the morning replacing a capacitor in a house that smelled like cat litter and cigarettes. The woman paid in crumpled 20s and offered us sweet tea that tasted like sugar water. Different world out here, Marco said as we drove away. Every world's different, I said. That's why we stay professional. He nodded like he understood. But at 22, professional was still a costume he put on, not something that lived in his bones. My phone buzzed twice during lunch, both service requests, neither from Meridian Hills. Good. Friday, I made it until 3 o'clock before checking my phone for messages I knew weren't there. Saturday, I organized my tool cabinet twice and cleaned the van until it looked almost new. Sunday, I drove past the Meridian Hills exit on my way to Home Depot. Didn't slow down, didn't even look. But that night, I lay awake listening to my ceiling fan tick. Same rhythm as the one in Claire's mechanical room. I counted the beats until I fell asleep. A neighborhood thread started with a photo I didn't take. Monday brought 3 emergency calls before noon. The heat advisory was finally over, but people's AC units were still failing from the stress. I was replacing a compressor in Castleton when Marco showed me his phone. Look at this, he said, a screenshot from the Nextdoor app, posted in the Meridian Hills group. Increased vendor activity at Whitman residence, multiple visits, extended time periods. Residents should verify all service personnel with gate security. No photos, no names, but the timing was specific enough. That's messed up, Marco said. People got nothing better to do. I took the phone and read it again. Professional hazard. Some neighborhoods watch everything. Yeah, but this sounds personal, like they got it out for someone. I handed back his phone. Not our problem. But my hands were shaking when I reached for the next tool. Tuesday evening, I was filling out invoices when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. but I recognized the area code. Mr. Cole, this is Lila Moreno. I live next door to Claire Whitman. My stomach dropped. Yes, ma'am. I hope you don't mind me calling. Claire gave me your number a while back, said you were very professional. How can I help you? My unit's making a terrible noise. Could you possibly come take a look? I know it's late notice. I looked at my schedule. Completely full until Thursday. I could squeeze you in Wednesday afternoon, I said. Oh, that would be wonderful. Around 3? 3 works. She gave me her address, one number different from Claire's. And Mr. Cole, don't worry about the neighbors. Most of us mind our own business. The line went quiet. See you Wednesday, she said. Lila Moreno lived in a house identical to the Whitmans but decorated like someone's grandmother. Floral wallpaper, family photos covering every surface, the smell of coffee and vanilla candles. She was maybe 60, silver hair, eyes that missed nothing. Thank you for coming so quickly, she said, leading me to her mechanical room. Her unit was 15 years old but well maintained. I listened for 30 seconds. Belt's getting loose, I said. Should probably replace it before it snaps. How long will that take? 20 minutes. She nodded. I'll make coffee. While I worked, she talked about the neighborhood, how long she'd lived there, how things used to be quieter. Claire's such a sweet girl, she said from the doorway. Been going through a rough patch. I kept my eyes on the belt assembly. Sorry to hear that. Marriage is hard work. Some people forget that. I aligned the new belt and tightened the tension. Almost done here. She speaks very highly of you. Says you're thorough, honest, just trying to do good work. I'm sure you are. When I finished, Lila walked me to the door. She paid exact change and pressed a plate of cookies into my hands. For your apprentice, she said. Growing boys need feeding. At the door, she touched my arm. Claire's a good person, she said quietly. Whatever people say, she's a good person who deserves kindness. I looked into those knowing eyes. Yes, ma'am, I believe that. I thought you might. The gate kept my plate number. I kept her sentence. That night, I sat in my kitchen eating Lila's cookies and thinking about kindness, how it could be simple or complicated, how it could mean everything or nothing, depending on who needed it. My phone was face down on the table, had been since I got home. At 2:06 a.m., it buzzed. I stared at the ceiling for 30 seconds before I looked. Unit sounds different. No rush. See. I read it 3 times. The message was factual and not, professional and personal, a request and something else entirely. I typed, I can come at 7, deleted it. Typed, after 8 works, deleted that too. Finally, I can check first light. The response came 8 minutes later, a single period. I put the phone face down and packed a spare filter in my work bag. She texted at 2:06 a.m., where truth lives. Sunday morning, 6:42. The sun was pale and low, traffic non-existent. Patrick was working the early shift. He looked at my plate number, then at me. Early call? He asked. Follow up. He logged me in with a neutral nod that somehow felt like permission. The Whitman street was quiet. No joggers, no dog walkers, just me and the sound of sprinklers hitting pavement. Claire answered the door in jeans and a soft blue blouse, hair in a ponytail. No makeup. She looked tired but clear-eyed. Good morning, she said. Morning. What's it doing? Come listen. We walked to the mechanical room without small talk. Professional distance. Careful space between us. The unit hummed perfectly. It was different yesterday, she said. Around sunset, like a settling noise. I pulled out my tools and started checking connections. Everything tight, everything normal. Could be thermal expansion, I said. When the day cools off, metal contracts, makes noise. Like old houses creaking? Exactly like that. I checked the fan balance, the filter, the refrigerant levels, all perfect. I don't hear anything wrong, I said, but let me check the closet sensors. Sometimes dust gets in there. She showed me to a utility closet near the kitchen. Clean, organized, a small panel mounted at eye level. I opened it and peeled back a corner of old tape where previous techs had placed maintenance stickers. The adhesive was worn. Mind if I place a new service sticker? I asked. Helps track maintenance intervals. Of course. I pulled a small white sticker from my kit, wrote in tiny, neat letters, quarterly check, EC, placed it inside where you'd have to look for it to see it. Coffee? She asked as I closed the panel. That'd be nice. We moved to the kitchen. She made coffee like she was grateful for the task. I stood at the island, watching her move through the morning routine. How's the nonprofit work? I asked. Busy. We're doing an emergency drive for the heat shelters, art supplies for kids stuck indoors. That's good work. It feels good. Useful. She handed me a mug. Your mom's center benefited from our grants program. I know. Thank you for that. It mattered to someone I'll never meet. Her eyes were bright when she said it, like the work meant more than she usually admitted. A notification pinged on her phone. Andrew's calendar reminder. Flight home, 9:15 p.m. We both saw it. Both calculated the hours. Long day, I said. Yes. We drank coffee in the quiet kitchen, talking about maintenance schedules, filter changes, normal things that felt enormous. I left a sticker no one checks unless they're looking. Should check the intake vents, I said when we finished coffee. Make sure nothing's blocking airflow. We stepped onto the front porch. The morning air was soft, cicadas starting their day-long song. I knelt next to the outdoor unit, checking the clearances. Claire stood a careful 3 feet away, arms crossed. Your mom, she said. What's she like? Tough, kind, worked 3 jobs to put me through trade school. She raised a good man. I looked up at her. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you tightened my cabinet hinge without being asked. I know you calibrated my thermostat for free. I know you donated filters to the shelter anonymously. My tools slipped in my hands. How did you? I processed the donations. Cole, no return address, but the invoice number matched your business registration. We looked at each other across that careful distance. Rich woman, working class guy. A gap that felt smaller in the early morning light. A jogger passed on the street. Across the way, Lila's curtain shifted. Claire took one step back. I did the same. Heat leaves. Evidence doesn't. Back in the closet, I handed her a printed maintenance schedule and one new filter. Quarterly check in 3 months, I said, unless you hear something unusual. And if I do, call the office number, leave a message. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Professional language, safe words, a treaty neither of us had negotiated but both understood. Thank you, she said, for coming early, for being careful. I nodded, just doing my job. But standing there in her hallway, morning light through the windows, both of us knew it had become something more than that. I should go, I said. Yes. At the threshold, I almost offered to shake hands. Professional closure. Instead, I just said, take care of yourself. You too. I walked to my van without looking back, but I felt her watching from the doorway until I turned the corner. Patrick stamped my exit log with extra attention. Neighbors are calmer when work's done early, he said. Good to know. I drove to my next call thinking about guardrails, professional boundaries, the difference between kindness and something else. That afternoon, I donated a case of filters to the community heat shelter. Anonymous drop-off, no receipt requested. Marco helped me organize the shop inventory. Kid was finally learning to count twice before ordering. You seem different, he said around closing time. How so? I don't know. Calmer? Like you figured something out. I locked the shop and handed him the keys to practice opening the next morning. Sometimes you just have to decide what kind of business you want to run, I said. Monday evening. 1 week since I'd first met Claire Whitman, I was updating my customer database when I got to her file: address, phone number, service history. I typed a note: Whitman, sensor balanced, next check in 3 months unless reported issue. Then I added: maintain professional boundaries, no off schedule visits, invoice all work. I saved the file and closed my laptop. At 7:58, I drove past the Meridian Hills exit on my way to a late service call. I didn't turn in, didn't slow down, but far off, barely visible through the trees, a small porch light glowed steady, not bright, not beckoning, just there, like a bookmark in a story you're not ready to finish. I thought about that light for the rest of the drive, what it meant, what it didn't mean, whether it was for me or just for her. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe kindness was enough. Careful attention to small repairs, quarterly maintenance, professional courtesy between two people who'd found something unexpected in each other's company. If the porch light is on, I'm just the guy who checks the unit. Careful hands, quiet promises, nothing on the invoice. Some neighborhoods have rules about vendor visits, time limits, documentation requirements, but some neighborhoods also have porch lights that stay on just long enough to say, I remember the way you listened. I remember how you fixed things you weren't paid to fix. I remember that you left everything better than you found it. And sometimes, on the nights when the heat finally breaks and the air moves again, that's enough. Some doors stay, cracked,